conservatives, religious fundamentalists, anti-SJWs, comicsgate, whatever. They all share some rhetorical tactics, and I'd like to point it out to you so that you can kind of keep an eye out going forward. For example, they look down on people who don't use common sense, despite there being no agreed upon definition of common sense, thereby making it a fallacy. They belittle wokies, rather than engage in any real substantive discussion about the topic at hand. And when they're confronted with the consequences of their harmful, antisocial words and actions, they'll say it's cancel culture, run amok. Don't get me wrong, there's people all across the ideological spectrum that use these rhetorical tactics, but I find them most harmful coming from the right. A few other examples would be SJW, soy boy, PC or PC culture, virtue signal, Trump derangement syndrome, and my personal favorite, forced diversity. It's not really my favorite, it's actually really stupid. It's, the reason I mock it with the name of my channel. These are just a few examples, of course. There are many, many, many more. But take a long look at these words that we're going to discuss here and really ask yourself, what ideas do they convey? They often sound like folk wisdom or, some kind of wisdom being passed down through the ages, right? How about, it's all good? That's one we often say. A lot of us say that, right? I say it. But, depending on the context, it can be pretty benign or it can be pretty sinister. It can be passive-aggressive. Either way, it's designed to stop the other person from thinking any further about the subject. God works in mysterious ways, or the agnostic version, shit happens. Both of these are reductive and simple. And if you don't challenge the meaning behind them, the intention behind these words, then you've allowed your thoughts to be terminated, so to speak, regarding the given scenario. How about, it's apples and oranges? Apples and oranges are very different things, but apples and oranges are fruits, and those are very different things from the given context that you're discussing, right? It's probably something that actually requires a more significant examination of the context and the details involved. Saying it's apples and oranges reduces the subject down to something so simple that, guess what? Thoughts get terminated. And if you're not mindful of this, you'll allow that to happen. Do as I say, not as I do. That's one you probably heard from your parents or some other authority figures. Do it because I said so. That's probably one you've heard from parents too. And I'm the parent, that's why. That's an appeal to authority fallacy, and it implies that, your parents just know best in all circumstances, and that because they're your parents, you should always do exactly what they say and never challenge it and never question it. Now ask yourself, do you think that your parents are flawless human beings? Probably not. Here's one that we hear a lot these days. Everyone is entitled to their own opinion, or that's just my opinion, right? Well, not all opinions are equally valid. Some opinions are formed by research and, analysis and evaluation of a myriad of details and factors that play into the given subject. Whereas other opinions are often just kind of, plopped out of someone's ass. I had an ex-girlfriend who used to say this next one, and it would just frustrate me every single time because it's like throwing your hands up in the air and giving up on a situation. And I'm not one for that, but it is what it is. Now, up until last year, 2020, that was a relatively benign statement that you could say in like a daily situation, like, I got a speeding ticket or whatever. It is what it is. Or I didn't get the job that I really wanted. It is what it is. That's relatively harmless. But last year, we had a president who bungled the response to a global pandemic and lied about it and still does lie about it. And, just completely botched the whole thing. And in response to the hundreds of thousands of lives that had been lost due to his bungling of the scenario, his response was,
1,000 Americans are dying a day.
They are dying. That's true. And it is what it is.
Now, in that context, it is what it is, takes on an entirely new meaning. It takes on an extremely cold and apathetic point of view. And it represents someone who genuinely doesn't care that they were voted into office to protect and serve the American people. And when he failed them and allowed so many of them to die, his response was to shrug off accountability by saying,
"It is what it is."
Here's a simple one that we probably all say like on a regular basis. Whatever. I say it. I say that a lot. Depending on the context, it can be two different things. Like, let's say the concert you really wanted to go to got canceled, and you finally just go, whatever, out of frustration. Now, let's say you are driving drunk and you run over a dog or something like that. And rather than, face accountability for that, you say, whatever, and drive off. You don't tell the people that you ran over their dog. Random example, that's just a chick flick. We've probably all said that term at some point or another about some movie or another, or multiple movies. But what does it mean? Is a chick flick something that's designed cynically to appeal only to women? Or is it a movie that centers around a woman's perspective? I've heard it used in both contexts, but those are two different things. The next one is a lot like that. SJW, social justice warrior. Okay, that offers a little bit of a hint at what's being expressed. Like most of us probably have an idea of what an SJW is in our mind. Some of you watching probably think I'm an SJW simply because I, speak out about equality and things like that. So is it someone who just generally speaks out about all social issues? Is that what makes an SJW? But why is that inherently a bad thing? I remember when SJW first started, entering the lexicon around 2014, 2015, and it was typically only used to identify someone who was very loud and aggressive and annoying and has blue hair. And since then, the idea around SJW has expanded to such a degree that you can basically put anyone under it that isn't on the far right. Like, let's say you don't like mouthy feminists screaming about their vaginas or whatever. Okay, that's annoying to you. Sure, that's your prerogative. It doesn't make you a bad person necessarily. But social justice is a far broader term than just feminism. So are you against all people who speak out on all social issues? Or just the blue hair ones with pronouns in their bio and whatnot? Do you even think about it? Have you really stopped to ask yourself what you are referring to when you say SJW? Funny how these thought-terminating cliches can actually terminate our own thoughts, right? Like, they're often used to cause another person to not think further about a scenario, and SJW does that as well. But yeah, really ask yourself, if this is a term that you use a lot and that you believe in unironically, ask yourself if you can really define what it means consistently. See how this only confuses the issue? I don't think that's an accident. Thought-terminating cliches are also an important part of cult indoctrination, or systematic brainwashing. For example, the Unification Church uses the cliche, "You think too much." I mean, that's a little on the nose for a thought-terminating cliche, but that's what it is. Their members, if they're expressing doubt or cognitive dissonance about their religion or whatever, the church might tell them, "You think too much." Many Christians might believe that God works in mysterious ways is an adequate answer to why a child might get leukemia and die, or why God would allow a building full of civilians to be bombed and destroyed. A political example might be, "Make America great again." Okay, well, when was it great? What exactly defines greatness? You ask different people, you get different answers. And that's the point. There's no definition to the phrase, only what the speaker implies when he says it. Then the speaker or the leader can, over time, fill in the blanks for followers by adding, subtracting, changing, manipulating, in their minds, what the definition of "make America great again" means. It starts off meaning, hey, let's lower taxes and get jobs going again, and let's stop certain religious people from immigrating into our country. Okay, that's one definition of "make America great again." But then 5 years later, the definition of "make America great" is let's go into the Capitol building while they're counting the votes from a Democratic election, and let's try and prevent that. Let's take a shit on Nancy Pelosi's desk. You see how the definition changed? The words didn't change, but the ideas in people's minds definitely changed. Thought-terminating cliches are easy to spot if you just keep this in mind. The less context that a term provides, the more a phrase dismisses or obfuscates the context of a scenario or a subject, the more likely it is to be a thought-terminating cliche. And when you encounter that, you should definitely think about it, right? I think these rhetorical tactics can more accurately be described as thought chaos cliches, in that they deceive people into thinking they're referring to the same thing when they can be and often are referring to two different things. Or they represent such a vague, ambiguous concept that anyone can project their own subjective ideas onto the term. The effect of this in a casual conversation can be relatively benign and harmless. But in the age of extreme socio-political partisanship playing out on social media all the time, well, the results aren't so harmless. In social and political context, a thought chaos cliche often hides intentions that are generally seen by most people as unethical, amoral, regressive, and malicious.